Hello tanks and tankettes, and welcome to part 3 of the current Patreon supporter week. And this is take number, I don't even know what. It's just been one of those 2 days. That's a saying, right? Yes, that really does encapsulate, you know, just how well I've been doing. The previous attempt at recording this, I'd forgotten to actually hit the record button on Audacity. So I sat and talked for 20 minutes and then realised I hadn't been recording, so that was good. Anyway, definitely recording this time. I'm not just talking to myself, which is not something I ever do anyway, of course, no. So we're going to start off this Tanks edition of the Supporter Week videos with some Matilda action, and it's the Matilda in a tier 6 game with pretty rotten matchmaking, actually. He is the only tier 4. No, actually, I tell a lie, there's a Hetzer as well. The enemy team doesn't have any tier 4s, that's why I was getting confused. So yeah, him and the Hetzer have both gotten the really short end of the stick. This is a 9-17 game, so this isn't the new matchmaking being wonky, this is the old matchmaking being wonky, as it very frequently was. And although for most tier 4s this would be a real problem, the Matilda at least has enough penetration to damage those higher tier tanks. A lot of the tier 4s can't actually say that. A lot of the tier 4s cope really badly with being down tiered, and at least with the new matchmaking you will get more of your same tier tanks to shoot at, but you're still going to struggle with those higher tier tanks. So lower tier tanks generally do still need some kind of rebalancing. The new matchmaking rules were really only a part of the solution. And well, you know, if they happen to make certain tier 4 French avian themed tanks a bit more playable and fun along the way, well, I for one would be rather happy with that. Not that I'm thinking of any tanks in particular there, of course. So that's his first kill. Like I said, he's definitely got the penetration to deal with basically everything except the OI frontally, and even then, if he can get the sidearm of the OI, he should have absolutely no problem with the 121 standard pen. He's even got some APCR, although typically for these very small caliber guns, I mean, this is, what caliber's the 2-pounder gun? It's like 40mm. Typically the APCR is very expensive for the actual amount of damage that it does, so you want to be quite sparing with it. So he's taken one hit, that's not too bad, but it was a third of his health in one go, and it wasn't even anything that was super dangerous, or anything with a super dangerous gun, rather. It was the Stug. He was also unfortunate enough to let that Hellcat get away early, but the Hellcat has now died, so that's not too bad. I mean, the Hellcat could have one-shot him. There are a number of tanks on the enemy team, in fact, that could have one-shot him from full health, which is just part of the joy of being bottom tier. But it does look like they're just about getting the upper hand, although most of his allies on this side have died, and the E2 isn't looking too great. He does, however, have the backing of a Lefebvre platoon, which is a completely balanced artillery, and remains so even in 918. Totally and 100% balanced, yes. So balanced it hurts. And although there are some enemy artillery, and there's an SU-100 back there somewhere, his position's not too bad. He's got a bit of terrain to use here, and although the Panzer IV might have been a problem, yeah, he's not really any longer. So I'm actually going to speed up this next bit, and yep, there we go, that was somebody taking a pot shot at him, because it's a Matilda. I actually cut just literally the first 2 straight minutes of this game out, because it was just Andy driving into position. I usually do that with warships games as well, it's like the first 2 or 3 minutes. They're usually just completely removed, and I don't usually have to do that with tanks, but in this case it was a Matilda, so I kind of did. So he's moved up as his remaining tank destroyer allies are moving along the A line, and He's a little too slow to get a shot on the M37, but he's going to get a couple at least into that AMX 13, so that's them done. And now it's just this remaining very low health Su-100, and the remaining tanks, they've closed the net quite nicely, and Andy, moved up at the right time, even if it wasn't moving up particularly quickly. So that was a first class, 1500 damage, 1518 damage, plus another 466 spotting. That's not bad, and in fact, when you look at the team lists, you'll discover that that was the best of either team. There was one on the enemy team that came close, the Skoda T25, but to get top damage and top score with your absolute bottom tier tank, there were only 2 tier 4s in that entire game, and they were both, there was Andy and that Hetzer. Yeah, that's not bad going at all. So yeah, I thought that was quite a nice one to open with. Next, we have Sebedy in the AMX M4 49 Liberté edition with the somewhat obnoxious camo, or at least personally I think it is. And he's in a platoon here with a Lerva and a Panther II. Now this is a pretty good tank, and the reason I've chosen this particular game, well, it's going to be his ace tanker game, I will tell you that right now, but it showcases very nicely both the strengths and the weaknesses of this machine, because it's got some very good things going for it, but you have to play it quite carefully, because all of its protection is basically to the front, and even then it does have a weak spot in the form of that commander's hatch. The gun, the firepower on this is also pretty good, but being French, it's not particularly blessed with a fast aiming time or good bloom stats, because, I don't know, French guns just don't, generally speaking, especially the French heavy guns. You can actually draw a lot of comparisons between French heavy guns and Soviet heavy tank guns, only the French ones tend to be a bit more accurate. It's just the gun handling is as bad. So, as there's no artillery, he's basically free to sit here at a rather steep angle, and he's actually baiting some shots into his tracks. Now, the main danger is in fact that he gets shot from the middle, because we know there's a T-34 there. There's also some medium tanks that have been spotted, but they're unlikely to be the things that will shoot him because they're a bit further down. So, as long as he doesn't push out too far and he keeps an eye on that T-34 potentially shooting him and anything else that might in fact be there, he should be fine. Now he's taken 2 in the track so far, which don't actually count towards your absorbed damage these days. It was a change they made that I was a bit iffy about, and we're going back a fair number of patches at this point, but yeah, I was never quite sure why they removed the damage you eat with your tracks from that equation, because if they didn't, his bounced or absorbed damage figures for this battle would definitely be a lot higher. So he's bounced 1 from the T-34, so his suspicions were correct. But at this point, the IS-3 just goes for it. The E-75 pushes forwards. They take out the enemy E-75. And this is where it's going to go a little bit wrong, because he wants to go and take out this IS-2, and unfortunately I think he gets a bit panicked, because the WZ takes out his ammo rack. He's starting to take hits from the camping tank destroyers, and instead of going forwards and down into cover, he actually starts backing off. And so he's taking additional hits from there, and he's also taken a hit from the T-34. So he's gone from 1500 hit points and bouncing things very nicely and being in a very comfortable position to being on 144 hit points, and suddenly things aren't looking so rosy. He doesn't even have his repair kit anymore. So this isn't so good. This is, the strength and the weakness of the AMX. As I said, all in one go. It really does have all of its armor protection to the front. And some of those tank destroyer shots, of course, could have been premium shells. I didn't have any mods for, I think this was 9.16, so I didn't have any mods when I was playing with 9.16, and so therefore I don't know for sure if any of those were premium shells, but some of them could well have been. So yeah, like I said, I think he got a little panicked there just at the sheer volume of incoming fire, and so the safer option, and the option I think that would have resulted in him having more hit points at this point, would have been to go forwards and drop down and use the terrain. And instead he basically chose the worst option, backed up and took all those hits in the process, because contrary to popular belief, French tanks don't actually go faster in reverse, funnily enough. Anyway, now he could just sit at the back and try and snipe away, but now he presses up to help this T-55A, who unfortunately hasn't really lasted, but he does have his platoon mate in the Panther II giving him some fire support from the B line. His Lerva buddy is back there as well, and on the rest of the map down south, the rest of his teammates are closing the net on these guys. Now this AT-15A, I mean, he's keeping this guy tracked, and I think it's the Panther II that he's got to be firing at. But I'm pretty sure this AT-15... did I say AT-15A? Completely different tank. Well, not completely different, but, you know, different. I'm pretty sure he's got enough gun depression and enough gun traverse that in this position, even whilst tracked, he could have just hit the commander's hatch on Sebidi's tank, and instead he tunnel visioned 100% on the Panther II. So, yeah, that could have gone much worse for Sebidi, and instead that guy was just, I don't know. Now the Foch is still there. That has a more than dangerous enough gun to take him out without even using the premium shells he has available. So he's got to be a bit careful, because the Foch might just decide, screw it, I'm going to get a last kill. But his buddy in the Panther II comes in, Manta, I guess that's supposed to be Mant 4, I don't know. And with the Foch being tracked, well, he could just come forwards and get that as the final kill. So that all went a bit pear-shaped, but I think he recovered rather nicely from that moment of I don't want to say blind panic, but I think there was a little bit of a panic there. And as I say, it was his ace tanker, and it was, you know, a good enough result to put him at the top of the team. 3.5, almost 3.6k damage and another 1,500 assistance and spotting. And so it's a really strong tank if you use it correctly, but Sebidi demonstrated there quite neatly a way to not use it correctly. It's just... I mean, I could have picked out a different one of his, but I thought this one was interesting because it showed a nice recovery, and it shows that not every battle goes smoothly. Not every battle with a good result goes smoothly. Sometimes these rocky bits happen, and it's learning to recover from those rocky areas, those times when you make a mistake and then have to deal with the consequences, and they can be interesting too. So on to this one. This one's a bit different. This is Runaway Brave Sir Robin. He of that wonderful name. He's actually this is in as one of my regular Patreon supporters, because he's been in the supporter spotlight strand in the past as someone who was previously in that bracket of sending me regular replays, and he does still support me on Patreon, but not at that level anymore, because, you know, people's circumstances change. Sometimes I get messages from people being very apologetic about, oh, well, I can't afford to support you anymore at the level I was, or at all even. But my view is always, well, it's your money, and stuff like, you know, buying food and paying rent and paying the electricity bill and whatever, that has to come first, because at the end of the day I'm just some dude on the internet, right? Anyway, so that was a little aside about I don't know. So yeah, this is on the Asia server, and this is actually a Clan Wars defense game. So if you were wondering why there was a missing team list on the enemy side, that's why. And there's actually a name on his team which is somewhat familiar to me, Flying Elite. I'm sure I've shown one of his replays, and relatively recently as well. Or if I haven't, then I've seen it somewhere else. So Brave Sir Robin here is in the Gorilla 15 with the 15cm gun, and I've actually cut away to a kind of third-person view of his action, because a lot of this game was spent with him doing nothing, just sitting in a bush, because that's what you do in Clan Wars. The field commander says, right, you go sit in the bush, cover the J and K line, make sure nothing presses down there, give fire support to the middle, don't get spotted, and that's what you do. And if that involves sitting in a bush for 15 minutes doing nothing, well, it's Clan Wars. You know, these are rather structured, organised team battles. You do what you're told. So he's obviously been told to blind fire the bushes, and I was initially a bit surprised, confused. That's completely the same word. Well done, Bray. That there was that kind of double firing sound, but then I figured out, of course, the Conqueror gun carriage is sat right behind him, so that was what we heard the sound of firing. Now, I don't know if he does actually pick up any damage out of this, but they have already taken out one enemy Batchat, and that's good, because autoloaders carry a lot of shock potential, especially when you're making a push and you're sending the autoloaders and they all unload and clip. You know, they can do a lot of damage very quickly. So for an offensive kind of setup, having a lot of autoloaders as a component can be quite important, but at the same time, of course, then you've got the downtime of when they have to reload. Now, their own team setup, bear in mind, I know nothing about Clan Wars, and I know comparatively little about team battles generally, and the more competitive nature of Clan Wars is different from normal team battles anyway. But with the defensive setup, I mean, they've gone for a pair of Mouses, or no, Moiser, there we go, I remembered what the plural was. The 215Bs I'm not that sure about. I mean, they know the map they're going to be fighting on, so it might be they thought they'd have a good position for those. The E5s make sense, because they've got that blend of mobility, firepower and armour, and then the rest is a mix of mediums and Brave Sir Robin in the Gorilla, and they've also got an E4 and some artillery. So basically the onus is on the enemy team to make a move, and it's just, I don't know, it's the nature of these Clan Wars games quite often, and I'm completely generalising here, but I mean, you see this with competitive games when you're watching stuff like the Wargaming Finals as well, and it used to be to the point where it was a real problem, and you would have like 12 minutes of inactivity and just then everything happening frantically in the last 3 minutes, and it's not quite that bad, but we're now at 10 minutes into this, and they finally seem to be making a move. The enemy Moiser yeah, I'd forgotten that I'd gone out my way to learn what mouse was in German, the plural. Mice, anyway. So yeah, they're making a push. So surely this heralds the enemy team making an en masse move. Surely. Well, you would think. I mean, when I was watching this the first time, that would have been my guess. And well, they know he's here because this is the obvious place. But he hasn't actually been spotted. That's them just blind firing this bush. So he's got to try and hang on here, because if he drops down to his left, he's probably going to get spotted, because you can actually get the mouse to have a 400 meter view range, or at least you could with optics. I'm not sure if that's true anymore. I'd have to double check. But yeah, with a good crew, you can get the mouse to have a not even 400. What am I talking about? 440 or a 450 meter view range. I can't remember the exact, but you can get it to just about max view range. And then there's potentially medium tanks that could spot him as well. So he's hung on, despite taking one hit. And, oh, there we go. That was very close. There was a blind artillery hit into the bushes as well. But fortunately, it didn't do any damage. So, yeah, he's doing his job. He's absolutely just chewing through the hit points of this second mouse, having demolished the first. He's already got over 4,000 damage done. Now, he is using the heat shells, but it's a Clan Wars game. Like, the proportion of premium ammo used in any competitive any competitive game is going to be really quite high, so that's not really anything to comment about. Now, it's at this point, almost 2 minutes later, in fact maybe over 2 minutes later, that the enemy mediums, and the enemy team does seem to largely be composed of mediums, start making a move around the north. Now, like I say, I know nothing about Clan Wars tactics, and I'm very iffy on competitive battles generally, but this seems like a massive misplay from this enemy clan, having not coordinated. Like, clearly the mouse component of their team was intended to push in, distract them, absorb some health, and then a bunch of mediums turn up from the other side, pow pow pow, do a lot of damage. But instead, no, that didn't happen at all. It just seemed to be weirdly uncoordinated. Now, I don't know if Sir Robin sent me this originally because there was something about this as a Clan Wars game, or if it was just he'd done a lot of damage, and also, you know, I don't get sent a lot of Clan Wars games. But either way, I thought it was reasonably interesting to watch. And I did have to do a little bit more recording than usual, just because he spent so long flicking around the place, because he was sitting in a bush for 10 minutes doing not a lot. But when the action happened, it all really happened at once. And you can see, just to be extra double safe, they've actually got people capping as well. Bit of a belt and braces approach, but, you know, it's Clan Wars, you want to win at any cost. So he ended that with 8,000 damage done, which is not bad at all. I think he had most of the hit points of the double mouses, the Moiser, but even compared to the rest of his team, yeah, he was chewing up a lot of health, and undoubtedly that helped them win, because if you can take that much health away from the enemy team all on your own, then it's going to make them that much weaker for your teammates. Very lastly, we have a newcomer. This is you. Every time in my head, I can't help it. It's just, I could just call him you. But no, for some reason my brain wants to go, you! It's you! Yeah, there was a national lottery slogan in the UK for a while, where a big hand would come down and a booming voice would go, it's you! So that's just in my head now. So he's in the Chinese IS-2, the regular tech tree IS-2, and he's learning firsthand just how wonderful the accuracy of this 122mm gun is. Of course, the IS is exactly the same, the KB3 is exactly the same. I don't like this gun very much. It's pretty horrible. Now, he does finally get a hit there with HE, I guess. And it is a guess, because this is a 917 replay playing on the 917.1 client, and they play just fine, apart from the fact that you don't get any ammo markers down at the bottom. So this is a top tier game, and although there are a couple of artillery, I mean, as long as he can get reasonably close to people, he's got a big gun, he's got pretty decent armour for being a tier 7 heavy, he's got good mobility, and so it's a recipe for good things, potentially. Now, he's spotted already that their cap is in trouble. They had an E2 who has died, that was more or less defending the north on his own. And I've had experience of this myself on... is this... not Siegfried Line, what's this one called? Arctic or something. I can't remember now. But yeah, quite often the West teams will just like ignore the entire north part of the map, and that can go very badly wrong. And it kind of looks like that might be happening now, but you obviously is determined not to let that happen, and is going back to do something about it. So the artillery have been completely ignoring the minimap, rather than actually move to a position where they would have been out of sight, which they can do. There's that little dip in K3, but no, they would much rather sit out in the open and ping F7 and blame the team, because it's all the team's fault that they didn't notice the minimap and move to somewhere a bit safer when they had ample opportunity to do so. Yes. So, the good news is, though, these are all lower tier mediums, and he should be able to deal with them reasonably well. Bad news is there are multiple of them. Although the MT-25 is just kind of running all the way south, and it's obviously the least threatening with its 57mm gun anyway, so the Panzer IV he can just one-shot, and does, and then that just leaves the Rudy, who has the more dangerous gun, and will take more than one shot, potentially, but just dealing with one tank, well, that's not so bad. Now, the MT-25 could be potentially really annoying. But then, any second now, there we go. Wow, my timing is awful. The Hand of Mao! The Hand of Mao happens, yes, it's like the Hand of Stalin, only not. And, can you tell this is late and after many, many attempts? And then he gets that MT-25, and so that's one less thing he has to worry about. Meanwhile, however, the rest of his team has died. In fact, the last of them has just died, the Lux. And now, he is going to get some useful information from that Lux that potentially will be very, very useful. But the rest of his team seems to have just not done very much. And so, here he is. 5 kills with 5 tanks left. I think you can do the maths. So he goes to have a peek along the northern approach just to see if there's anybody there. Maybe somebody sneaking down this way. And, well, there is. It's an artillery. And the artillery isn't that big of a threat, or at least that artillery isn't, the Crusader SP. But he can, of course, spot him and light him up for his teammates, particularly the other artillery. I don't know what that shot was. That was a bit odd. Of the remaining enemy tanks, well, the IS is, of course, the biggest threat. The KV-85, I mean, it's got a decent gun, but it's going to need multiple hits to take down you. I can't help it. I just can't. And the T-67, well, all depends how much APCR he's willing to spam and how quickly he runs out of ammo. Because if he's shot a bunch of ammo already, he might be running low. The T-67 does not carry a big load of ammo. That's one of the very few deficiencies of the T-67. It's got speed, it's got a pretty good gun, it's got a pretty decent camo factor because it's actually quite a small machine. It's got a turret, but it doesn't carry a lot of ammo. So, T-67's been spotted and actually has done a bit more damage, but then, oh, this is awkward, there's the Su-8. Why couldn't you have just been a good clicker and just sat at your base and been far away from the action and not driven up behind him? That would have been entirely the sensible thing to do. And instead, he's found his W key, and this has all become very, very awkward because, well, the moment he fires, somebody is going to come and fire at him, and it could be the Su-8 in the backside, which could potentially kill him. It could be the KV-85, which would be less bad, but he still can't really afford to take the hit. And then there's the T-67, and again, it would take multiple hits, but it just would be bad to lose health. Now, the KV-85 gets very unlucky. He takes a shot on the move, and unfortunately it goes low. Yu's own return shot is very lucky, and once again the Hand of Mao was very strong in this one. And yes, it as Jingles likes to say, reached up from the depths of hell and helped him out. Didn't kill the KV-85 though, crucially. And well, he looked like he might initially get a shot on the Su-8. The Su-8 was able to back off, and the KV-85 then got some hits in. I think the T-67 got some hits in, so he's now down to basically a two-shot. Like, if they both hit him together, that's it. Now, that was a risk, but it paid off. And now it's just this T-67 who, oh dear, this could be bad. Come on, turn. Oh, that was in the track, but it didn't actually do any damage. And, well, this is awkward, because he doesn't have a repair kit. He's obviously used his repair kit already. So, this looks like it's it. It was a good attempt, he got a Radley Walters, but this T-67's basically got him pinned. He doesn't have gun depression, and, clearly the T-67's got the ammo. He's apologising to his team. What's happening right now? T-67, did you run out of AP? Did you bounce all your AP? Or just shoot it into his tracks? There was at least one penning AP shot. But he's now clearly onto his HE shells. Okay. This is happening. This is what's happening now. Yeah. Okay then. That T-67 pretty much gave the match away. Yeah. I mean, you think you've seen it all in World of Tanks. And then, well, very rarely is that true. Now, there was one crucial piece of information that got lost in the edit. I know what it is, but you guys don't, because I did a little jump cut. And that is that the Lux, in his final moments, as he was driving by and finally succumbed to the enemy, he discovered that the IS was in fact completely AFK. So, not only has the T-67 cost them this match, but that very, very stock IS has as well. Even with his stock gun, if he'd been alive at this point. What even is that? Is that a... That looks almost like a 76mm, but surely it must be an 85mm. I can't remember what guns the IS gets, but that's a very small looking gun on the IS. But he's just easy prey, and so therefore we've gone from a certain defeat to a Pulabanov's medal, which is what happens when a Pul's medal and a Kolobanov's medal have a drunken night in Vegas, and 9 months later, the Pulabanov pops out. And did I mention it's late? So he also got a steel wall out of that, another couple of medals as well. 4,000 damage done. Almost 1,700 base XP. And a victory he really wasn't expecting to be handed. But there it was, between that T-67 and the AFK IS. That went from a reasonably close defeat to being just a absolutely stonking runaway Pulabanov's win. And all I can say is I would like some games like that handed to me a bit more often. That would be quite nice. But sadly, World of Tanks doesn't quite work that way. People will insist on, shooting back most of the time, which is very unsporting of them. So, I hope that was an entertaining one to finish this video, because I certainly felt it was. It's not every day you see a result like that. If you have enjoyed this collection of replays, you can hit that like button, you can leave any comments below, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and, as always, stay tuned for more.